Hello, let's now have a look at the senior job roles in the media industry. So these are the people who are at the top of the tree. They're responsible for managing all the other staff in the project and just generally ensuring the project meets the client requirements. So let's start with looking at a production manager. This person would work on film sets or TV sets most often. That's the sort of production we're talking about here. They oversee the logistics of the entire production. Now, the word logistics means all of the sort of day-to-day organization and ensuring things are in the right place and it all runs smoothly. So let's look at this in terms of the phases of production. Ordinarily, a production manager would be around in pre-production and production itself. Now, they're not really involved in the creative side of things. They're doing the organization. So they'd have to create a production work plan and ensuring that it follows the budget they've been given. And we'll look at some of the components of work plans later in this playlist. They'll also need to, once the filming locations are decided, obtain relevant permissions. If they're filming on someone else's land, for example, need to get some consent from the landowners. And they'd also perform location recce's and create risk assessments. And those are another two concepts we'll look at later in this playlist. But essentially, this is visiting the location, ensuring it's safe. If there are any risks, trying to put in some plans to try and reduce the risks so there are no health and safety issues. Now, their role during production is to essentially make sure everybody else follows all of the planning they've put in place. So ensuring that all the staff are in the right locations, ensuring the work plan is being followed and the budget is being managed, and ensuring the risk assessment is being followed and avoiding any health and safety issues. And generally, there will be issues which arise during filming, and it will be their job to try and handle and sort out these issues. Another role which a production manager would work with is the director. So the director leads on the creative implementation during production. And again, we're most often thinking about film or TV here. Now, actually, they are involved in all three phases. It's a really important role, of course. In pre-production, they need to receive the script, interpret it. If you were quite a well-known director, you might have the ability to change aspects of the script if you wanted to. And they'd also need to work with the production manager to plan out the filming, because it's not necessarily the production manager's role to decide where each scene should be or which actors are needed. The director would have a massive say in all of that, so they would have to work together here. During production, the director really has to shine because they will decide on the arrangement of the set. And this includes the lighting, this includes the location of the cameras, this includes perhaps some of the costume design. And the term for this is mise en scène, which is a bit of a pretentious term for just everything you see in front of the camera. We'll come back to this term later in the playlist as well. And they actually need to be a management role here. They'll need to guide the actors and camera operators and audio technicians to make sure they are doing what the director is picturing in their mind. And then, especially if they are quite an influential director, they will also be working during post-production to make sure the video editor and sound editor actually put it together in the way they are expecting. Another job role, which is a bit confusing because we've used this word before, editor. An editor, when it is a senior job role, oversees the quality of the final output of a media product. Now, we are, in this context, thinking of like a senior executive in the company. We're not talking about a video editor. We're not talking about a sound editor. The editor would be really the manager of both of them, potentially, and someone who's really quite senior. So, for example, the editor of a newspaper is one of the most senior people. The editor of a TV channel is one of the most senior people. So they are really involved in pre-production and post-production. They're often the person who gets a production going through commissioning a media product. Commissioning is where someone requests a product gets made. Maybe a TV channel editor decides, oh, we want to get some more crime dramas in our schedule. They might commission a crime drama from a production company. It can also be the other way around. A production company might present an idea of a crime drama to a TV editor, and they would decide, yep, let's go ahead with this. So they're really making the decision to get a project started. Once a bit of work has gone on with those production plans, they will often sign it off because they might be the person who is paying for all of this. They might sign off on the hiring of key members of staff. They might decide who's going to direct it, for example. An editor may not get too involved in production, but when the main work is finished, they may well start to oversee the work of some other editors who are not a senior, like the video or sound editors. If it is, say, a newspaper, there'll be some other editors who work on the text. The proper editor would oversee all of this work, and their job is to make sure the quality is consistent with their other pieces of work and generally suitable for the target audience. So they may make some tweaks or request changes based on this to ensure the final output is strong. Another quite specific job role is a campaign manager. Now it's quite specific because this really relates to advertising. The word campaign is kind of the term we use for the whole advertising process, where you are deciding to advertise a product. How you do this is the campaign. The campaign manager plans and implements this strategy. And they're involved in all aspects of this advertising campaign. At the start, they oversee the planning of the different advert formats. Usually, especially if it's a big budget campaign, there'll be different types of advert, maybe a radio advert, maybe a TV advert, maybe stuff on websites. They also will either do it themselves or they'll ask somebody else to conduct some research to try and understand the audience to make sure whatever they choose to do is as effective as it can be. Once production starts and the different adverts start getting made, they need to oversee the quality and the consistency of the adverts, and they'll need to manage the creative and technical members of staff who are actually creating the adverts. And in post-production, they need to, once things are done, lead on how it's going to be distributed. So where are these adverts going? What's the strategy behind where they're going? And also eventually, they may be asked to evaluate their impact. Are you seeing the sales you were hoping to see? How could it be improved for next time? That's often part of this role as well. And the last job role to look at is the creative director. This person would again work across all three phases. Creative directors exist in quite a few different industries. It's quite a vague term, to be honest, and it means different things in different companies. In some companies, the creative director will do very little, and they're just a famous person. In other companies, they are really quite important. When they are quite important, their job is to decide and then implement the overall creative vision of this company. So often we see these in the fashion world, where the creative director will oversee a new set of clothes, for example, or it could be in an advertising campaign as well. It could be in a film, but often we think fashion for creative director. Now in pre-production, they would need to interpret the client brief if there is a client. If it was a really important person, they might come up with what they want to see. They'd also need to work on this overall concept. They probably wouldn't do it alone in a big company. They might just oversee it. They might guide the work of other creative people, but they're ensuring there is a clear overall concept which fits with their creative vision. During production, they may not get their hands dirty too much, especially if they are quite a senior person, but they're trying to ensure there's consistency across the different members of staff working on this project, especially when they do pick a famous person for this role. The job is often to try and inspire the other creative staff to come up with new ideas and fresh ideas and try and keep them motivated. And when things are roughly done, they need to sign off on the quality of products, maybe make some changes if it's not to their standards, and then also they'll often be the person who delivers it to the client, maybe presents it to them, maybe shows up at the fashion show or something like that to make sure everyone is aware of their creative vision.